she emphasized the importance of thinking decontamination separately, but not think like that, but think decontamination in the context of future reconstruction of the region. And some other important points have been also made. And lastly, I'd like to request Professor Harashina. Perhaps he is going to give us a good insight into local communications. So, Harashina Sensei, please.
Hi, Harashina desu.
Thank you. I'm Harashina. I used to be with Tokyo University of Technology, Tokyo Institute of Technology, until March this year. And my special area is social engineering. In English, social engineering may not mean much. Public planning and policy making is the translation, appropriate translation of what we mean in Japan. So, based on what you have, that has been already been said by our friends from abroad, I believe I cannot agree with you more. Miranda said it is important to have a future vision, and decontamination should be positioned in this context. Mr. Suzuki, our leader, has always said this. But in terms of planning, Japan is still significantly behind, and we haven't had much of a track record in terms of successful planning. So I have to say that the path towards the future can be very challenging in Japan. You talked about the importance of dialogue. But it is very challenging for us to resolve the situation is that even in ordinary planning, it would be difficult to facilitate dialogue in the urban planning and in the field of urban planning. However, radioactive contamination is an additional factor, and how to build a future society is incrementally important difficult challenge. We have experts and stakeholders, and both experts and stakeholders should come to the table to promote dialogue. And we need to learn from experts, and we need to learn from the stakeholders. Experts should fully understand the feelings on the part of the stakeholders. So there has to be a dynamic two-way process of exchange. So there are many challenges in the situation that we currently face in Japan. I appreciate the input by all the 5 experts from abroad, and Dr. Tefa was kind enough to share with us your input. We, the members, are very pleased to receive this input from our experts in order to solve the challenges that lie ahead. Given the circumstances that we have experienced in Japan so far, one difference between Japan and Europe is contamination happened in a community. In the case of Chernobyl, Belarus was in the neighborhood. However, for other countries in Europe, there was quite a distance from Chernobyl. So that is a difference between Japan and Europe. And the concept of land is the importance that people place in land is much higher in Japan. And control of land use can be implemented in Europe. However, land use restrictions, there are many in Japan. Therefore, usable land is quite limited in Japan. That is to say, it is more difficult in Japan than in Europe to control land use. So those are some of the reasons why we see difficulties. We do not have unlimited financial resources. Perhaps deciding not to use a particular land is something that we need to consider on a step-by-step basis. And land use is the most difficult area when it comes to planning. And land use is where we have to be delicately handling. So it's a very difficult question to address. This peril has to be converted into fortune, an opportunity. And we need all the stakeholders' involvement to come up with a future vision. Otherwise, decontamination for the sake of decontamination may not make sense. Where to conduct decontamination, where intentionally not to conduct decontamination is something that we need to debate. And in doing that, what is challenging, difficult, is unilateral leadership by experts may not convince the general public. And I believe Edward said this. IRPA International Radiation Protection Association, IRPA's activities. Guiding principle on stakeholder engagement by IRPA is very relevant in this context. Stakeholders, residents have to be a part of the dialogue, and there has to be sharing of information towards resolution of problems, and this will enhance the likelihood of resolving problems and difficulties. So that is a multilateral process that we have to in place. Once we have a community in place, there is a likelihood that we may actually pursue this route. In that city, there is Omni district, and there is not much availability of information. Therefore, the citizens, residents are measuring aerial dosage and level of contamination, and they found a lot of support in the form of provision of equipment, and they themselves have come up with a map, contamination map. So these are resident-led initiatives, and this is an area we found afterwards where the first Japanese agricultural cooperative was established. So this area has always had a tradition of strong citizen leadership, but this can be done in other areas as well. And scientists and engineers and social or science experts should support these resident-led initiatives. The fundamental challenge Japan faces, the biggest and foremost important challenge that faces Japan is the transparency. There was a delay in provision of information. I have seen the disaster-stricken areas, and I thought that was tragic. That Kino restricted one of the restricted areas in yesterday. I visited Namiye district with protective suits. And you have to go through a rigorous screening process when you exit the place. If you go to Namiye town, in the close neighborhood of the nuclear plant, the residents there evacuated to the western area. But because of the direction of the wind, without knowing, they had to they evacuated to the area where the dosage was very high. I mean, there was a discussion about Speedy. Why is it that the provision of Speedy was so much delayed? And as a result of the delay in the provision of Speedy, they had to spend days in that highly contaminated area. And you don't have to spend much time to predict. And I'm specialized in environmental evaluation assessment. Therefore, I know that the simulation models are available. So once you know the direction of the wind, you can identify immediately which are the most risky areas. Why is it that that information was not forthcoming? I mean, I'm puzzled by this. Perhaps there was a hesitance on the part of the Japanese government in telling the truth. But I think telling the truth is very important. By telling the truth, we could have avoided these residents evacuating to the most risky area. So the issue of transparency is important. We need to enhance transparency and information disclosure. And I've put together a written material to share with you on this topic, but because of the time constraint, I have to give it up. There are other specific examples. Because of lack of transparency, there have been a lot of problems that have been caused. And we need to squarely face these challenges. Put differently, this could enhance the trust and confidence in experts. Because of the transparent process, they taken incorrect actions in a very untransparent process. But opening up the process and enhancing the transparency of the process will enhance the confidence that people would have in experts.
And
in English, I had to take more time, so I spoke in Japanese.